What is up, guys? My name is Guillaume. This is Thomann's Guitars and Basses at the Ibanez Guitar Festival 2025 with the good Dr. Dan. How are you, sir?
I'm excellent. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for the invite. It's an awesome show you've put on. We're really happy. We're surrounded by exceptional guitar players. Paul Gilbert, Manuel Garner Fernandez, Tom Quayle, Martin Miller, Henning's there too. That's, can't be perfect. But we also have the luxury of the most incredible vintage Ibanez collection I have ever seen in my life. And Dan is going to take us, that Chris has seen is a much longer life, by the way. So it's even more exceptional. And Dan's going to take us through his highlights of those guitars. Please take us up.
All right. So just to give you a brief rundown on what we have here, we have an archive of more than 3,000 guitars, like historic guitars that date back to the 60s, 70s, and from there I was able to pick 120, 130 pieces, the ones that haven't been on exhibition previously or the ones that I found most interesting.
Yeah.
And here in the exhibition, everyone can basically just browse through the history of Ibanez, and we try to provide, some tidbits of historic stories and whatever, so that people get a good idea of what Ibanez is and how Ibanez developed over time, because that's an amazing journey, right? Yeah, and then here, we started in the 60s and 70s, and that was like the copy phase. Ibanez was a brand among others that were just producing guitars in Japan that were close to the US originals, the ones that everyone wanted to have, but they had their idiosyncrasies, like this beautiful one that's a 2397, and those are subsequent numbers, so it's getting, it got better. So, for instance, this is like inspired by a 335, but there's also a lot of casino vibes, with the pickups, the layout of electronics, very unique pieces. And what's so special about these is sometimes they have a bolt on like this, so which adds some more nuances to the tone. So I've also got a couple LP copies at home that have a bolt-on neck, and this is a different shade of that tone.
100%. Those are really sought after as well. They're really, really on demand.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And then, of course, the iconic musician.
Yes.
Of course, in the mid-70s, there was that kind of dispute between the US manufacturers and the Asian manufacturers where they said, okay, guys, there's actually intellectual property rights going on, and you can't simply copy our headstock shapes and everything. So Ibanez at that time, or Hoshino, the mother company, was forced to come up with something themselves. And it didn't take them too long to come up with some iconic shapes, like the Iceman, which unfortunately is not an exhibition, and also the musician. And what's so beautiful about this guitar is while the actual the actual model itself is no longer present, some details like the headstock shape is still, it still survived until 2025, or even the logo already, dates back to that time. That's still hand inlaid at that time, so it's just unique. So every logo is a little bit off or a little bit different, but those were amazing, and you can tell, the pickups. This is pretty much where Ibanez started to do their own thing, also when it comes to hardware, when it comes to the design and everything. That's they just discovered their own identity during the mid-70s.
Yeah.
And another cool design, a blast from the past from the mid-70s. This is actually a signature model for Bob Ware of the Grateful Dead. And he had different models. For instance, this is called the Cowboy Fancy. That was more like an SG kind of inspired model. Right. But he also had something like this. And, there are a lot of iconic details on this guitar. For instance, we've got the engraved pickups that actually show the flying fingers. Flying fingers is something that Ibanez has been associated with since the 70s. We had competitions that were called Flying Fingers, and what more sounds like shred than Flying Fingers, right? So that's super iconic, and all of this. Also the vine inlay, which later transcended into also the Tree of Life. This is something that happened already there, and it's a great piece of history. Also the iconic headstock.
That headstock is insane.
Yeah. And there were similar ones, like this one, for instance, the 2405. That's called the Custom Agent. That's one of the most sought after guitars because of that scroll head. And that headstock is so prone to breakage because it's so thin. So it's very rare to have a piece that's actually a clean one that actually has that still going on.
It's very mandolin-esque kind of a design. It looks awesome.
Also, the inlays are very ornate and very individual. And you've got the fancy pickguard and everything. The rest basically is almost music history, because then Ibanez started to also get more artists on board. For instance, George Benson. Unfortunately, we don't have the original model here, but he was like one of the first jazz guitar artists, and he's going to celebrate his 40th anniversary with Ibanez, I think in 2027. Back in the day, we had Lee Rittenauer. There was a signature model for him. We had Joe Pass as well, the full hollow, and that's already like a very specific type of 335 shape, and which later would transcend into the Artist series and still lives on up today, right? We have still have the AS series, so that's a pretty cool one. Yeah, and then Ibanez kind of took a road to more like the bolt-on and shreddy guitars. So they copy like Strat style guitars and went into the extreme shapes even further. And what's so special is at that time also the Iceman kind of really became famous back in the day. And nowadays we've got so many iterations of the Iceman. We've got the Iceman, we've got the Fireman, which is the flipped Iceman, which is Paul Gilbert's guitar. And it's just super iconic. And that started already in the 70s with the Paul Stanley model. And then later in the 80s, it went on into the Iceman series and of course Destroyer. So that was pretty unique.
We're starting to see that shape of the like inline 6 headstock as well. Like that's when it comes into play a bit. And but I was really blown away by the amount of, and we're only gonna get there, but the amount of names and artists that were playing those guitars too.
Yeah.
It's just
Sting as well.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. That's crazy.
It was funny because he had those I think 924 models, those basses. And the musician basses, and he kind of removed the frets and just played this as a fretless version. And there were a lot of people, and nowadays these are also sought after, that buy those basses and get the frets removed to have an original, like Regatta de Blanc era. Exactly. It was, yeah. So that was pretty dope. Yeah. And then moving on, talking about artists, I mean, there is such a plethora of artists that were kind of playing Ibanez. For instance, of course, Gary Moore back in the day, who is basically the model, the RS 1010 that he played, the Roadstar. We had Alan Holdsworth, and of course, which actually was another super cool signature model, Steve Lukather. And while this model was rather short-lived, the 1010 SL actually had 2 iterations. So we have one version which has that nice top and has a natural headstock, and there's also a second version with a different tremolo and also with a painted headstock.
Right.
So it's even crazier for collectors to get them all. It's like Pokemon. Yeah, and then moving on, of course, in the 80s. At that time, there were a lot of shredders. Shrapnel Records was a thing in the States, and the fast players like Paul Gilbert, Steve Vai, they were looking for a brand that could deliver the guitars that actually brought to the table what they needed. A recessed tremolo, a super thin neck, and everything. So Vai and others, they were approached by a lot of companies, but actually it was Ibanez who nailed it, and it all culminated, of course, '87 with the Gem. Yeah. One of the probably most recognizable and most iconic guitars. And by the way, that's my personal one. That's mine, yeah. So, and this guitar, or these guitars, these 3 colors, they got released in '87 in Chicago at the Summer NAMM show. And the masses were blown away. It was a very bold statement to come up with a guitar like that. That was unheard of. With a monkey grip that was polarizing, with the lion's claw here. That was, with a very stark contrast and everything. Also, to have the original edge tremolo on there, it all kind of came together. And this is probably one of the most iconic, like super straight guitars and highly sought after. So we have a nice collection of these as well.
And that's the first. Tell me if I'm wrong, but that's the first sort of take on what would become the RG, essentially, the shape of the guitar.
At the very same year, they not just released the Gems, but also Ibanez released the RG series, and that was actually designed as a more toned down version of the Gem. Get rid of all the bells and whistles that add to the price tag and just reduce it to what is key, to have like the super tuning stable tremolo, to have HSH configuration, to have a super fast wizard neck, and to have those kind of edgy shapes that kind of looked metal and rock, right, back in the day. So that was pretty wicked. And from there, there are so many iterations of that model. It's you can't count it, Yeah. But luckily, we also had a couple other models here on display, like some super limited 540R CF models. They were the then president at Hoshino. He was a fan of the Nagoya's Illustrator Club, which was a club of artists at the time. So he approached them and he told them, okay, I want you to do I think like 60 or 80 different models, and eventually they came up with all unique one-off guitars, and we have 2 on display here. The one that is wrapped in newspaper with different languages, French, German. It's Figaro, Le Figaro.
Yeah. So stuff like Hebrew. I see German there on the side.
Chinese, Japanese. So that's very unique. Or also this one, you know, that's a very almost Steve Stevens inspired look, right? Danger Zone. So that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, 80-piece guitar series, so 80 models like that.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
80th
great.
anniversary, correct? Yeah. And then moving on even further, so there were some thoughts. Okay, how can we kind of take the RG shape to a different level and add some nuances to it? So they came up with that offset shape, which is called the 540p2, which is nowadays one of the probably oddest iterations of the RG, but also one of the most sought after. And there are even a couple Instagram groups that are like bring back the 540p2 and something. Yeah. There's a hardcore fan base for these models. Yeah. So these are pretty unique. Yeah, and then of course Ibanez was never short of ideas. So basically, Joe Satriani always was a guy, you know, that wanted to do chrome guitars and something that was fancy looking. So this is one of the first prototypes. I think less than 10 had been produced in 1990 that got chromed. Unfortunately, since wood is moving all the time, that chroming process didn't really stand the test of time, so it never went into mass production. But luckily, a couple of years ago, somewhere in our archive, I found this one, and we prepared it, and it's super unique to have this prototype Chrome Boy here on display.
It's a nightmare for OCD people, but it's amazing. Like I could never. I could just.
Yeah, and then going further, I mean, there are some more unique guitars like the purple multicolor. That was one of the swirled design done by About Time Designs in the States. So these are highly sought after. Only 271 pieces made of these, and these are super unique. It's one of the few Ibanez guitars that actually have a purple logo on the headstock. You rarely see that. It's either black or white, but this is really unique. And here, even talking about variations, so this is the Universe. So basically, taking the gem as a basis and kind of coming up with a 7-string version of that. That was also unique at the time because Ibanez was the one manufacturer that actually brought 7-string to the masses. So they started producing 7-string guitars, and nobody cared about it. Unluckily, nobody cared about it. So that was the Universe, of course, lived on, but 7-string guitars were rather short-lived. And it wasn't before Korn actually, where all that came back, you know. But the foundation dates back to the 90s, you know. So it's 10, 15 years back in time, you know. Yeah, and there are some more cool things, like this is one of the first 7-string S models. You know, S is a super thin series. It's named after a saber. That's why S. Super thin. It's thick in the middle, full thickness in the middle, but very, very, very thin on the sides. So it's super lightweight. And, you know, this is one of the custom-made 7-strings from 91 that we have.
Is it like DNA we still find in models like the Jiva, for example, like those kind of guitars? It's awesome.
And you either hate it or love it. But people that love that design, for them, there's no real alternative. Really gotta say that. Yeah, and then moving on, of course, we got the Starfield, which was a spin-off version of Ibanez guitars, where they didn't want to spoil like the main brand and didn't want to, you know, hurt the image, but they wanted to come up with some unique designs. So there were some US ones and some Japanese ones. Yeah, and then moving on, of course, you know, several variations. We had more gems. It's actually the green multicolor that was actually in the catalog. So that's super cool. That's the one from the catalog. That's the actual one from the catalog. Yeah. So a collector offered that to us a couple months ago, and I was like looking that up, and I was checking the catalog. I was like, huh, okay, wow, it's the one. So we're like, awesome to have it back in our archive. Yeah, and then there were some more variations like RT models that had 24 frets and were designed to look a bit more like classic-y. We had different variations like the SV, which was a S guitar with a much thicker neck to kind of appeal more to the kind of S style players that want a beefy neck. Yeah, and then of course more models. Like this is also a special one. This has been brought. This is the only one that's not locked because this has been brought to us by a poor player, Rudi Butters, who was a big German band, and he was one of the guys who played the 3070 GN, which was a green guitar with a green fretboard, which was unique. And the cool thing about this is actually not lacquered. It's a thin kind of paper, and it sticks in place because of the frets. You know?
Oh wow!
Yeah. So and that helps that the stain doesn't go away. You know, over time.
Yeah. It doesn't feel too bad.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And he was playing that guitar live. They played stadiums. They played like 100,000 people, and he was playing that with this guitar. And this is actually one of his guitars. So that's super cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then moving on, I mean, you know, there are a couple variations. Like this was the 10th anniversary model for Stefy in 1996. Super cool, engraved. Every single piece has an individual number, so you can really tell that it's that you have a special piece if it's engraved. You know. Yeah, and then moving on, of course, there are some more oddballs like, you know, this the RG Paint. These are all hand painted guitars where there's only 2 of each. We've got another anniversary model for Steve Vai, which is the 90th anniversary model for Hoshino, actually. So they released 4 different guitars in 1998 for their artists, which was John Petrucci, Steve Vai. We have Joe Satriani here, which is a beautiful kind of flip-floppy chameleon colored. Yeah,
Purple, like yeah.
correct. And then also a PGM model. So these were very unique. And then yeah, there's so many like details in here. Like for instance, this doesn't look like a special guitar, but this is one of the original Andy Timmons guitars made in 1999. There were only 172 pieces made of these. These were made in like a custom shop section at Fujigen, and they have amazing necks. They play great. They have a different layout than what the new ones have as well. So these are super collectible and a piece of history. And you know, I'm a sucker for Andy Timmons. So
Yeah.
obviously, no, that's not mine. Unfortunately, that's
still
like
has
look,
the plastic.
yeah, it has the plastic on it. No.
That's so cool.
Yeah, but that's my main. Not this one, but one like this is my main guitar for 20 plus years now. It's a great piece. Yeah, and then moving on, of course, George Benson. There are so many guitars, and he's got great taste not just in music, but his guitars. Holy moly, he really adds something to it. You know, every single guitar that he turns out that he approves is a piece of art. It's so incredible, and we'll see some others as well over there.
Yeah, we still see like the tuning buttons are the same as the ones we start finding in the 60s already. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, and he's got his own logo with his, you know, the GB. That's inlaid. It's pretty cool. The Millennium Y2K. What better than doing some sort of special run that was completely off the records, like completely unique and.
Oh, that's the DNA. Oh yeah. I was like acrylate. Oh no.
You know the story about this guitar, yeah. So they actually used blood of Steve Vai and put that in the paint, and then they applied that with that hydro dipping swirl job, and that's unique. Also, it's got the DNA inlay instead of the Tree of Life. So you see that.
Double helix.
Yeah, correct. The double helix, and also it glows in the dark, so it's pretty unique. And there were 3 models for the Millennium. We had this guitar, we had the Crystal Planet, the JS 2K, and of course, as I said, George Benson always has a very good taste. We've got the Masquerade, which is a nod to George Benson's first and one of the most successful albums, The Masquerade. So with the inlays and everything, that's just a piece of art, right?
That's insane. Like the contrast just between those 3 guitars. It's like Ibanez guitars. Yeah, have a look in mine, and then. All right. Okay.
Think again.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and then of course we talked about 7-string.
Yes.
Everything changed because of these gentlemen.
Yeah.
Korn, Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, they brought new metal on the scene, and Ibanez was at the forefront of that movement. And what's so cool about the K7 models is that they have the U-bar. We talked about a NAMM show about that, right?
Yeah.
So this was the OG line with that U-bar, and that's pretty cool, you know. And it's like going full circle that for this year we have the new signature models, with the yin and yang.
With the U-bar again.
With the U-bar again, yeah. And then moving on, there's even more like the AX series, like Artist, kind of double cut inspired with some super cool finish, and of course a fancy Steve Vai anniversary model.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Of course, Big Thompson from Slipknot had an obnoxious 7 inlay fretboard, but a great guitar with neck-through construction and something very unique. He had a locking tremolo, but no trem arm. Yeah, and there are more guitars. Like this is the Silver Surfer guitar. That was the 20th anniversary model. They actually got the license from Marvel to get the Silver Surfer inlaid on the top of the guitar.
Oh yeah, it's
You can touch it. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So it's
It's
a 3-dimensional
freaky,
representation of the Silver Surfer, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and then there are more models. Like this is a Hoshino celebration model for their 100th anniversary. They came up with this one, a super nice saber with some inlays in silver.
Oh, yeah, so
Yeah.
body. Yeah, that
Handmade. You can always tell from the custom shop if they have the stamp.
true on the last.
Pretty cool.
one.
Yeah. And then even more, going more crazy. The custom shop opened in the mid 2015, 2016. It was open to the public. So for the first time, we could actually go there and ask, okay, can you do a guitar like this and guitar like this? And this is one of the prime examples. This is owned by Mrs. Meidel. She asked me to, Dan, I need this particular model in our collection because I like it so much. So we put this in the collection. That's hers, and it's a beautiful guitar with a poplar barrel top and that blue resin. That's beautiful, and it's a super light swamp ash with a white ebony fretboard as well. Yeah. That's a nice one. Yeah, that's light for an RG. Right? There's nothing.
And it's kind of crazy that nowadays you see that done for every coffee table in every rich person's house. Ibanez was doing it first on guitars.
Yes. That was pretty cool. Yeah, and then the times they were also changing a little bit because Ibanez introduced a new series in 2011, which was the premium line. And this is one of the very first guitars that came from the premium line that were made in Indonesia. And what's so special about it that is that the Indonesian production was actually so sophisticated that they could do all the fancy stuff like natural wood bindings, 12 ply necks, and all of that stuff. So yeah, something like that, or 7-ply, 9-ply, whatever. So multi-ply necks, super cool with bubinga and purple heart and all those kind of crazy woods back in the day. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Yeah, and then going into more recent territory. Oh, we can go here.
We're getting to the guitars that I remember covering at NAMM. So like this is
like our kind of generation where we were covering stuff at NAMM. Of course, we have the OG AZ signature models, and as you mentioned, the MM1 is one of the longest running and still signature models from the AZ line, and it's super cool. It's that one is so special because it's got a mahogany body and a flame maple top, which kind of blends together like the super strat idea with the Les Paul kind of idea. So tone-wise, this is a beast. And of course, Tom Quayle with the monkey pot top was also really unique because it added something, and every single piece of these was unique. And funny story, I don't know if I'm allowed to tell, but I'm going to tell you. I think he's probably fine with it. He traded one of the prototypes against one of our guitars because he liked the top so much when we were on tour. It was like, can I keep that guitar? I'll leave that with you because I like that top better. You know, sometimes you just gel with that one guitar, and he really was in love with that, so he kept that. And I think this is the one he returned. So this is one of his prototypes back in the day.
Yeah, very early piece.
And then talking about something super special, this is the GB30. This is like the guitar for the 30th anniversary for George Benson, and this has been covered with gold, which makes it one of the most expensive Ibanez guitars ever released.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Do you remember like a ballpark price, kind of?
15 list or some 15K list. Yeah, so it's still nowadays it's like okay.
Oh yeah, regular
from the US.
regular custom shop prices. What are you talking about?
But back in the day, it was a head turner for sure, and that was pretty cool. Yeah, and then talking about NAMM coverage, something that you will very vividly remember is an up and coming artist named Steve Vai standing at a nice venue and telling us about his new signature guitar line, which was the Pia. And back in the day, we were lucky enough to secure 3 from the original run. These were all limited colors, so only available in 2020. Yeah. Super cool. Now highly sought after with the fancy inlays and everything, and that really marked like the second phase of the Steve Vai signature line, because so many iterations. You know, the monkey grip is gone now. We've got the pedal grip. We've got new inlays. We've got the Utopia pickups. It's more rounder edges as well. It's much more rounded. So it's a more, let's say, more mature, less aggressive, but more artsy guitar maybe. So that's really, really nice.
Like, to this day, the pickup covers on the PI is just a thing of beauty. Like, I cannot get enough of it. It's beautiful.
Shout out to Mike Mescar. I think he did that design. He's one of the artists for Steve Vai and does all the artsy stuff for him. So that's pretty cool. And then ending or topping off, of course, with a bang, we've got the PR77 Bonvillain. So this is all brilliance of now. So this is like the latest iteration of the swirl guitars. It's a Pia that's been swirled by Bonvillain Designs. Yeah. And Dave is a fantastic artist. And these have 3 layers. So they shine under UV light. Also, they glow in the dark. And they have this fancy stuff going on. So it's like the ultimate stage guitar. You cannot not be seen on stage with those, right? So this is pretty wicked. Yeah, and the Pia is one of the most successful models nowadays, and we're looking forward to seeing more.
Wow. Yeah, so are we. Like, this is truly exceptional stuff. I'm really happy I got to see all of that, because it's definitely a new outlook for me on the history of the brand. Like, I love art chats, and I love learning how to decode a guitar name and stuff. But like, this is really special. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
Hope you guys enjoyed that video as well. Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.
Cheers.
Bye.